You're listening to the Dibbly-Dobbly podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram.
Hello, I'm Gideon Haigh, and you're listening to the Dibbly-Dobbly podcast.
So Gideon, I thought to end our discussion today, I've enjoyed it immensely. I've really enjoyed it and learned a lot along the way. And I hope you've enjoyed it as well.
Yeah.
I know you're a little bit angry about the ICC there, but hopefully you've got that frustration out.
What are they there for? Just to get pissed off with?
I thought to end our discussion today, Gideon, I asked our listeners to send in some questions to you to answer.
Sure.
About cricket, and they want to get your thoughts on that. So we've got a few people who've sent in questions. Thank you to everyone who sent in their questions. Our first one is from the Stats Man. And this was on Instagram, Gideon. He says,
Right.
What is your take on the BBL draft, and will it improve the cricket economics of Australia? Thank you for your question there, Statsman. What are your thoughts on that, Gideon?
No, it won't. There we go. Next question.
It
was a hopeless failure last year, wasn't it? It was just ridiculous.
Yeah, I covered the draft on our podcast for a live stream, and a lot of people were saying it's not. Afterwards, they said it was a total flop. It didn't really do much.
Pathetic Me Too is from cricket. Oh, football's got a draft. We've got to have a draft too.
Yeah, well, I can understand the BBL doing that because they'll never have an auction. No other T20 franchise league besides the IPL will have an auction because they don't have that amount of money. And Cricket Australia is not owned by private owners or investors. BBL's Cricket Australia own the BBL and not other parties. So, well, they've made some changes to it for next season. So see if that could improve it. But it wasn't really a success last season when they did it for the first time. Raj has sent in 3 questions for you, Gideon. So it's a 3-parter. He sent 3 questions for you, 3 individual questions, I should say. So the first one is, he says, you talked about dynasty teams of West Indies and Australia and how India were on the verge to do it just as Australia was about to do it again after the ball tampering incident. That we are due a dynasty team, it just somehow doesn't happen. Under Curley, India had a great chance and can be even considered a dynasty team for a short while, but they lost to South Africa and had a good chance of winning in England. But because of their IPL greed, didn't play the last test till a year later and lost the match there, thus drawing the series. And again, we are entering the late 2000s, early 2010 stage where every team was beating every other team at home and just losing away. With the sport being more competitive between the top 3, at least in test nations, and nations like South Africa, Sri Lanka, and New Zealand on the decline, can we even hope to get a dynasty team again? So your thoughts on that, Gideon?
Well, I guess I would say, do we actually want a dynastic team? I didn't enjoy cricket all that much when it was only Australia who was winning. I got a bit bored with it, frankly. I actually like the idea of cricket success being shared around. I suspect we're on the cusp of seeing a hegemonic team, India, which will, certainly India's preferences will shape international cricket and who can play against them and maximise their opportunities to make money off the back of that. So perhaps it'll be a commercially dominant team rather than an on-field dominant team, because who knows what can happen when 11 men play 11 men. There is that inherent unknowability. Even India, for all its wealth and glamour, can be beaten. It's harder and harder to be a dynastic team because, of course, you have to stretch your players over all the formats. What constitutes a dynasty these days? Is it being World Test Championship, World Cup holder for ODIs and T20s, being atop the rankings there, and really only 3 teams in the world have even the possibility of attaining that status, and I think it probably would at best be temporary. So, okay, there's my answer. we don't want a dynastic team. It'll be boring. And it's actually what constitutes a dynastic team anyway?
Yeah. His second question, Gideon, is
All
the
right.
political element.
Yeah. Go on.
The second question he asks is the political element of boards have been in the news more than ever in our history of the game, where even the common cricket fan is able to recognise the behind-the-scenes people. Is that making them take decisions that are conservative? For X, not questioning about a player's questionable behaviours on field, or when they have an actual proof, just abandon them completely like Warner, or prepare pitches so they don't lose at home like Pakistan.
Was that political in Australia's case? I didn't think. I mean, Malcolm Turnbull had some remarks to make, but I think we do have a freestanding cricket bureaucracy in Australia. I don't think our decisions are politically shaded. Having said that, the sight of Albo and Modi on their little motorised shoe going around Modi Stadium was not for the weak-stomached. I didn't like Australia participating in what was obviously a party political rally for the BJP. I thought that was actually pretty disgraceful of Australia. I don't think Albo was called out on it sufficiently. I mean, I think the BCCI is an obvious case. It's an arm of the BJP these days. It's thanks to family ties and to political contrivances. I mean, every institution in India is being politicised by the Modi government, and I think it's high time that cricket blew the whistle on that, but they won't because of self-interest. It's actually one of the things that concerns me very much about this ICC distribution. So I have absolutely no idea what the BCCI need this money for, and I have absolutely no surety that it will go to the deserving or necessitous parts of the Indian cricket economy. We have an awful lot of money in cricket these days. We're overly obsessed with where it comes from and insufficiently interested in where it's going.
Yeah. The third question, this is the last one for Raj in this marathon of questions here. He says, how does one maintain the balance between playing in domestic tournaments and international T20 leagues if the player wants to be an all-round cricketer and not just focus on one format? Does the demand of of today's cricket, I should say, make you quit other formats? If yes, can anything done about players in this manner?
No. Money is a huge determinant for players. I think there is increasingly an attitude, or players are encouraged in the belief that life is long and careers are short, and you best make hay while the sun shines. So I think this next generation of players coming through who cannot remember a period before franchise T20 will tend naturally to slip into the idea of profit maximising where their cricket's concerned. And frankly, why not? That's all administrators do. In some ways, the players are simply emulating the administrators.
We have another question here, Gideon, from Jihan, a regular listener of the podcast. And this was via our YouTube channel. He says, with the rapid expansion of T20 franchise leagues all over the world, in particular with the ones in South Africa, the UAE, and the USA, closely tied to IPL franchises and investors. Firstly, do you think this spells an end to international cricket being the pinnacle, and in particular ODI cricket and the World Cup, which to me as a fan, I still think is the premier tournament in world cricket? And then he goes on to say, how do you think the potential of players being contracted by T20 franchises rather than international boards will affect this? And if there is the potential for all these premier T20 tournaments leading to an increase in match fixing and betting scandals and potentially predetermined results in some way similar to WWE wrestling? Thank you, Jihan, for your question. Gideon, your thoughts there?
Apart from the last bit of the question, Jihan, I think you've answered it yourself. I think these are very, very real threats, and we probably will see them unfold in the next 2 to 3 years. I think it's a little bit like W.G. Sebald said about the bombing of Germany during the Second World War. Once the bombers were on the tarmac, it was inevitable that they would be launched and bomb German cities. There's the money around, there's the capability around. There are insufficient countervailing forces. I see the game unfolding pretty much the way that you anticipate. I suspect international cricket will persist for as long as it offers an opportunity for India to excel. India likes cricket that it can win. The World Cup will continue to be relevant if India is a power in it. We have India hosting, of course, in 2023. So opportunity for them to win. People will say, the World Cup, it's really, really significant. But if India stopped being interested in ODI cricket, it would pretty soon ebb in importance. And I think there are signs that, bilateral series for ODIs are waning in significance around the rest of the world. And this IPL has been absolutely amazing. Coming off the back of the Test series, the Border Gavaskar Trophy, which was I felt rather disappointing, rather abrupt. I thought pitches were poor. I thought the general quality of the cricket was pretty lackluster. I thought the crowds were pretty indifferent. To see the IPL, people roll into the IPL and it to rate and attend so colossally was an indication of the relative degree of interest of the Indian cricket fan. And frankly, as the Indian cricket fan goes, so the rest of the world follows.
Yeah, thank you for your question there, Gian. I hope Gideon answered it to
Sorry to give you such a pressing answer.
to the best of his ability. We have another question from Alex. This is from our YouTube channel. This is a two-part question. So his first question is, do you think it's a good idea to scrap T20 international cricket for test-playing nations? And his other question is, do you think that there is a prospect of the IPL becoming something like the NBA of cricket, having a monopoly on the best players for a significant part of the year, whilst other leagues will be seen as places to showcase one's talent for the IPL?
Well, T20 is the fastest growing and most commercially lucrative property round. I don't think international cricket should be deprived of that potential. I can understand why you might think about dispensing with bilateral T20 series to tidy up cricket's calendar, but why should international cricket have to sacrifice something for the sake of franchise T20 cricket? I enjoy T20 internationals. I enjoy seeing the best players play T20. It's great fun. The worst T20 is the T20 that's played between ordinary players, where it just looks like chaotic crap. But the best T20, when it's played by first-choice international sides, is great. The World T20 that we had in Australia last summer had some of the most memorable T20 games that I can recall. So, and I can't recall all that many of them, frankly. So I don't think there's an argument for that. I understand the arguments both ways. Frankly, if I had my druthers, there would be fewer franchise T20 tournaments around the world. I think most of them are a bit pointless. I don't think they're producing particularly high quality cricket. There's an element of Me Tooism. There's a sense that, we have to have one. But I think, New Zealand has kind of got it sort of right as far as T20 is concerned. It's just fun. Their domestic T20. They don't take it all that seriously. They haven't allowed it to cannibalise the rest of the game. I think sometimes we over-egg T20. We put too many eggs in the T20 basket. So maybe that's the area that has to give. I think there's cricket fans these days are absolutely spoiled for choice. They get more days of cricket. It's more accessible and arguably more democratic than it's ever been before. But I don't think the appetite for cricket has grown considerably. I think in some ways cricket is cannibalizing its own market. I think people, given the choice between attending a day of Test cricket or a bilateral ODI in Australia and a night at the T20 in the BBL for the kids, they're probably going to take the latter, aren't they? It's like the choice between a home cooked meal and a night at McDonald's. I don't blame people for taking that choice if it's offered to them, and I don't think there's too much we can do about complaining about that.
No, and I think by having 3 formats, it gives you that choice to watch any form of cricket you want.
Yeah.
You know, some people, it's their personal preference. Would you choose to watch a Test match or a T20? Most people would say, "I'll watch a Test match because I grew up on that. It's the oldest form of the game. T20 cricket's just a bit of fun, nothing too serious. It doesn't really matter if you win or lose in T20, but in a Test match it does. So I guess it's up to people's personal choice and preferences. But I do know a couple.
I want to see good cricket, Jack, and I'm happy to take it in whatever form it comes. A boring day of Test cricket is still a boring day, and a good T20 match is better than that, quite frankly.
Yeah, I think it just comes back to your personal preference, really, that many people have. But just thinking about when T20 first started, Gideon, India were dead against participating in the first ever T20 World Cup.
Ironic indeed. Yeah.
Because the only reason they were they took part was because the hosting rights for the 2011 World Cup were being negotiated at the time, because I listened to it on this audiobook about T20 cricket that I was listening to recently. And they talked about that. And then the following year, the IPL was created after they won the T20 World Cup in 2007.
Well, the IPL was already on the slipway at the time that India won that tournament. But you're right. The victory, 2 victories over Pakistan in the T20 World Cup in 2007 do give a huge impetus to the IPL. Indians love a form of the game in which other Indians succeed. It makes sense.
Yes, it does. And our final question.
I've got a hot date at the National Archives, so let's make this the last question.
Yeah, this is the last question anyway, Gideon, from Terrell, from our Twitter page. And he says, what are your thoughts on the 2024 to 2027 ICC revenue? Which I think you've already answered a little bit there, Gideon.
I have already
your thoughts on that?
They're baleful, let's just say, and pessimistic.
I think that's a good answer to finish off on. Hi, everyone. Hope you enjoyed listening to Gideon answer some of your cricketing questions. If you want to listen to Gideon's cricket podcast, etc., with fellow cricket writer Peter Laylaw, the links to that are in the description of this episode.